Welcome to our bi-weekly dev stream. My name is Matt, this is HB, and this is Mark. We've got some cool stuff, which I say every week, but we've always got cool stuff. That's how I feel. It's been a couple of crazy weeks here as the launch kind of like got shot out the door, and we put out our first update, and we kind of landed, and things are starting to settle and feel normal again.
I think the last update was much harder than we thought it would be. Mm-hmm. And I'm specifically talking about doing the server update.
Oh god,
right?
that was a nightmare.
That was my fault. I totally underestimated how hard it was to actually get the update out to like 35 servers.
Yeah, I mean, we've never had that kind of volume in the past.
And like, I thought, well, you know, it's just kind of like, because I think the most we ever had to update was maybe like 5 or something, right? Back in February or March. And yeah. And it felt back then, like, once we got the first one out, it wasn't too painful in getting the other ones out too, right? But one thing that we're doing very differently this time around is that we were saving the progress of the wars.
Yes.
Right? And that made it a lot harder to roll out the updates, because not only did we have to make sure that the update was applied to the server, we also had to make sure that the save file was properly loaded so that the state of the war would still be the same, right?
Yes.
And what made it even more difficult is that there was a bug in the save game system that was that required some manual fix-ups on the save game for like half the servers out there. So so it was kind of like a juggling act of like, we gotta roll out the updates, we gotta keep everyone informed on what's happening, and also we had to go around and fix these save games that were broken. And unfortunately, in like 2-3 cases, we weren't able to restore the wars, but you guys were pretty understanding of that and
gracious enough to not completely obliterate us,
not be upset about it. So just wanted to thank you guys for your patience with that. We're already going to be working on some tools to make sure that it goes a little bit more smoothly next time, but probably still be a few problems, but hopefully after like the next 2-3 updates, we'll start getting back into the flow of things of rolling out these updates in faster times, right? So
a fashionable manner.
Yeah. So yeah, that was fun. And
your definition of fun is different than mine, but sure.
I just remember like I opened like the Steam forums, and everybody was like, the servers won't let me sign in, and no one knew. It was really it was definitely something that we're gonna improve.
We started the update at 4 something, and usually we're done by 5, right? And like some of us were here until 8, even 9. I mean, I was here until so late that the other stream started, the
Foxhole community stream.
And I was like, hell, I'm already here. I'll just stick around and like watch that stream as well. So, but the good thing is that like Matt was saying, things are starting to get back to normal. We're doing our dev blogs, we're doing our community highlights posts.
Yeah, it's back.
And it was just, it was just sort of this moment in time where we were like sort of driving a really small car, and suddenly, it was really like agile and everything. That was during like the pre-alpha, and then suddenly like 100 people all kind of like jumped on that car.
And now you're in a double deck bus, and
yeah,
you're like,
exactly.
Wow, how do I drive
Everything
this?
moves just a lot slower than usual, but we're getting back to it. So
for the record, since a couple people are mentioning it, I was also watching the community stream.
Yeah, the stream was awesome. Yeah.
It's a cool thing that is interesting to see other people's perspective on like the nitty gritty parts of the game that we think that only sometimes we think about.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, this time I was not, because I was getting away on vacation. So.
Were you on vacation at that time?
I was preparing for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I tried to take a vacation this weekend, and I feel like
fairly successful.
I was fairly successful. Some of the FCL stuff happened on Saturday. I kind of like took a break just to like watch some of it, and like the spectator camera was kind of like broken. And I'm like, oh no, I should go in and fix it. But I'm like, you know what? Like, let's just let this one slide this time, and you know, we'll get that fixed for the next one. But anyways, do you wanna?
Yeah, let's move on to community highlights.
Sure.
Community highlights is
back.
Is back. Furthermore, if you don't know what community highlights are, basically it's what it sounds like. We take, you know, submissions of fan art or cool things or
everything
that is being done by the community, and then we highlight the ones we like on the stream. And then there's also a blog post that is more comprehensive with like a whole bunch of other stuff. So we're gonna hand it off to HP.
Sure. Yeah. So on the stream, we just pick a couple or like 2 or 3 of the posts of the images or topics or whatever it is that are on the actual post, and there's gonna be a link to the posts. Matt is gonna find it and do it eventually, and I'll do it on YouTube as well. But we're just gonna talk a little bit about some of them. And the first one is these ones, which are fan-made profile pictures,
right?
Which I really like. One of them is from Papa Brownie Bear, is actually just like a modification of the one that we already have, and Lurkas did one of his own characters on his style. And I like these ones because it's an idea that we actually thought about a little bit. It could be we have submissions of profile pictures. We decided to not go with that because it's a floodgate that we are not ready to open. Mm-hmm. Who knows what could be done. But I particularly like Papa Brownie Bear because technically something that is not too hard to think that we could do, right? If we had like one template and then you just add bells and whistles to like
it's like a layered system.
Yeah, that's what he did. Like he took one that already existed and then he created like things on top, like added the details on the helmet and the mustache and the band-aid and the eye patch and things like that. I thought it was really cool, like a small thing.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny on the right hand side with like the cartoony approach. We were actually thinking about that when we were working on the portraits. We were like, should we go on more of like the realistic side or more on like the stylized side? And we in the end kind of like decided to stay more on like the realistic side, but it's cool to see what it could have. It
could have been.
Well, I think like much of the game, it sits on the more realistic side of stylized. I wouldn't say it's more realistic. Like it's not like it's not like a photorealistic portrait ever, and our game is not photorealistic.
It's not photorealistic,
but it's definitely not like cell shaded cartoony like the image from Lurkus. Even though I think that was a direction that we had thought about. At one point, I even think the whole game might have looked like that at one point, but we pushed a lot further into the more realistic, like real materials, real look, real proportions, but just a stylized like shapes. I think is sort of the way we went. I do like the idea of sort of like features on a face, like you have like a face and then you choose facial hair and like that type of thing could become.
Yeah, we discussed that a lot as well when we were talking about the portraits. It was a possibility. It does require like a lot more work, and we have only a small team, of course. But so actually doing like each portrait one thing, it's easier on us, allows us to do it.
Move on.
This is another cool one. This is a Flamethrower done by Ariax. I don't know actually how to pronounce
Ariax?
it. That's what I'm assuming.
Sure.
I just thought it was a cool model. Like this community highlights was chock full of things. It's been way too long since I've done it. I try to do it every 2 weeks. But this time, because of the launch and everything, it's been like at least a month of content. So we had so many different art projects that were done, and including this one, which was I think was the only 3D one for this time. Mm-hmm. But I think it's simple enough that could fit in our game and has the style of a proper like flamethrower. You can see what it is. It's so I like it a lot.
Yeah,
it's a nice.
I think flamethrowers are something. I think we talked about this last week.
Yeah, flamethrowers
are something that we want in the game at some point.
Yeah.
Just like kind of end of thought. Like I think one of the things that I had mentioned when we originally started thinking about some of the flamethrowers that I wanted fire to be more than just like a visual effect.
Yeah.
fire should be destructive and
should work.
Yeah, it should work like fire. And along with a flamethrower, you could have like Molotov cocktails or light oil on fire. Like there's so many ways that you can interact with.
Or even a gasoline. Like we have so much fuel in our game, right? It would make sense that it would work.
So like I definitely think I think that's one of those things. It's like a sniper rifle or like planes. It's one of those things that requires a lot of thought because of the potential like sandbox impact it could have.
I like this one just because of that. Oh, this is a neat one. This is actually a tool, like an Excel spreadsheet tool. On the community highlights post, you can actually find the link. You can click on the picture and go to the link that was posted. Basically, it's a calculator. So you know how using a spotter, you can use a field artillery and shoot very precisely. It's really neat. It's using calculations that were actually done by other players before. We had other people creating like similar guides on how to use a spotter to reach an enemy with artillery. But I thought it was neat that this person, I think it was called Will Freeman. I actually didn't know. So I apologize if I'm misquoting somebody in here or like misattributing this to somebody else. But I think it's called Will Freeman, and he did this online spreadsheet that you can just input from the spotter position both the distance of the artillery and the enemy, and then it gives you exactly what coordinates you should tell the artillery,
right?
Both an azimuth and the distance, which is exactly what you need to reach your target. So it's really fun, really nice work.
That's cool.
I find it always enjoyable when we see people creating these auxiliary tools. Like CD still have that online map tool,
right?
And actually, like a Russian player was talking to me this morning. He was asking, "Oh, can we have like images of the map? We wanna like build a tool to like draw on things." And I'm like, "Well, a player already created. I sent it to him."
Actually, I think there was a second one of that too.
Oh yeah.
But it was an existing tool. It was an existing map tool that was used for a bunch of other games too, like Squad and maybe like War Thunder. And so it's a shared like mapping tool. And then I think support was added for Foxhole.
Oh, that's sweet.
Which was kind of cool because I opened up the list of games. Now like, hey, those games are all really cool. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
Like we're here as well, right? So it was really cool to.
We should mention that somewhere in our game eventually. That we have those. So yeah, these kind of things are always impress me. Every time somebody does any kind of guide or tutorial or anything like that, it's cool. But when somebody creates something that is like interactive, and like it's a tool that other players can use, it's always like a step up. And I really enjoy it.
I just want to apologize for you guys are hearing bass from downstairs. There's pubs below us, which sometimes the music, there's not much we can do. So let's move on to the next topic. What do we got next?
Oh, that's the next one is interesting.
Next one's community highlights. Okay, I thought that was the end of community.
No, it is.
Oh, right, this thing. Okay, right, yes. There's no way we couldn't talk about this.
No, absolutely. This is the Foxhole Competition League. There's a trailer for it on the community highlights as well. Basically, this is a player-driven competition in Foxhole. So if you like the competitive aspect of Foxhole, if you play the campaign and you enjoyed it, this is another way that you can play in a competition form. And this was all created by players. Like we have no input in it, and it's pretty sweet. And we really like to showcase it because it's such a cool idea. And we already started seeing the first matches, and you can see highlights from the matches that already happened. They're all on the Creative Steam Plug channel. It's really sweet.
Yeah. So if you want to play Foxhole more on the competitive side, you might want to look into this. There's actually a short clip of this that I wanted to show you, so you can get a feel of what this might feel like. Is there sound, Matt?
There might be.
I guess I can try to turn this up.
There might be. You guys might be. They'll tell me if they can hear it.
Yeah.
I have a feeling the answer is going to be no, but. So this is, can you give some context for what's actually going on here?
Yeah, so, well, the highlight is actually the commentary that's happening. So,
okay.
Unfortunately, if you cannot hear the commentary,
we can post the...
Then there's not much to highlight. But basically, this was one of the matches, one of 4 matches, I believe, that happened on Saturday. And I believe they have a bit of a tournament style event going on, right?
Yeah.
So the first 4 matches happened last Saturday. This was a commentary stream on one of the matches, and I believe next Saturday there's going to be another round of matches as well. I don't think there's, as far as I understand, I don't think any new teams can sign up for this particular round, but I think in the future, if you're interested, you should get in touch with these guys.
This is pretty much season 0 right now.
Season 0, and it's a little bit of like a test as well, from what I understand. So there were some kinks. I mean, certainly on the technical side, we actually threw in a crude version of a spectator mode at the last minute, and it was like half working. But during the night scenes, it was really dark and you couldn't really see anything.
Yeah, because of the way that the fog works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like we basically built a little tool to use to film the trailer. And last minute, I was like, hey, why don't I just throw that in as a spectator?
But we forgot that even on the trailer, I had problems
Yeah,
with flying around.
with nighttime mode, and we literally slid this out on Friday afternoon.
And this was just for the tournament?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but we hope to improve on the spectator mode in the future, so that these commentary streams can be much more polished.
And things like the spectator mode will be usable by like admins on community servers. Is that?
Yeah,
I
think that's something that
idea?
we're looking into, right?
Okay.
But I gotta say that even with all the problems, this stream is really cool to watch. If you have time after, you should definitely check
Give
it
it
out.
a shot, yeah.
So
It's cool because we're becoming an esports now. We have commentators, we have a league, we have everything. I'm telling. What people mocked me when I said that Overwatch had so Foxhole was like Overwatch and had a meta, and people were like, "Oh, there's like the mortars was the first meta. Now the tanks are the meta." But it's becoming an esports. Look at that.
Now there's just got to be a way to figure out how.
Well, it's funny because
be 100.
Oh yes.
it was never our intention to turn it into like a hyper competitive thing. So, but we think it's cool, and if we can support it in any way, then we will. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think if people want to pursue that and go down that road, we'll help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the general feeling that I'm getting.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on.
Yes.
So the next part is the suggestions.
So there's a couple of here. I think we only like. How are we on time, Matt?
We're good.
We're good.
Cool. Maybe we'll just go through 2 or 3.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
So just for anybody who's new, community suggestions is what it sounds like. We're gonna just talk about a couple suggestions we thought were really cool. They're not confirmed or not gonna be in the game. It's just something we think is cool and wanted to talk about. So if you want to introduce the topic.
So yeah, we read all the suggestions, and this is one of them. My idea to solve vehicles theft and locking issues. Basically, the idea is that you can name vehicles, and it prompts it. That name when you're using it. When you log out, that name is cleared. And developing on that idea is that if you can only lock things that you have claimed with your name, and that the idea is to help a lot of the vehicle theft that happens in our game. That we know it's a problem. Yeah. We know that we always said it's a team game, so you having possessions is kind of different than in other games. But at the same time, we understand that it's hard. A player just drops in, he sees a vehicle that is abandoned, and like, well, I'm gonna put this to. Even when they are trying to put it to good use, sometimes they don't notice that it's just somebody else that has been doing a run for supplies and is coming back, and now the vehicle is stolen, and then it creates a big issue and things like that.
I think with the whole truck stealing issue is at the top of our list right now, and it's something that we want to take a look at as soon as possible. So I thought that this idea was really cool, because even though I don't think this would necessarily solve most of the issues, it at least I think would help with the one issue of the misunderstanding, right? So there are many reasons why a truck might be stolen. In some case, someone just wants to steal something.
Yes.
In another case, Maybe they thought they were helping or something. But I think in there's another case where they just don't know that
it's an honest mistake.
It's an honest mistake, and I think this would at least fix that one issue.
Well, there's a fourth issue as well, is that all vehicles look exactly the same. So sometimes you don't even know
if it's on your side or if it's like the enemy's. Right?
Or even if it is the one that you were using some time ago.
Right. So like, you know, it's kind of rare to have like a catch-all solution, but I think this one is interesting because it could at least help with the messaging, right? Of like, hey, look, like someone might be using this. You should be careful, right?
Especially because I like the point that, like, we talked before a little bit about having maybe as like eventually the possibility of having you being able to tag your vehicle with a logo or something like that, or with a color or something like that. Like, that's a cool suggestion as well. But I particularly like this one in particular. One thing that I like about this suggestion is that you can only claim, and the vehicle only keeps your name for as long as you're logged in.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
For a short period.
I really
so that after you log off, that vehicle, so if there is a name, you know that at least that person is in the game.
Yeah.
You know that that person is using it some way or another, right?
Yeah. And then I think another reason why I like this suggestion is because even though this might ultimately not be the right solution, right?
Yeah.
It's coming at the problem from a different perspective, right? Whereas like what we found in the past working on Foxhole for a whole year is that usually the first answer is not the right one, right? Like we've seen this so many times from like the item production, right? Like at the beginning, everyone was like, oh well, because most of you guys don't know, but at the beginning, the way you produce your items is that you have to wait at a factory and wait for like a queue. It was just very different from the way it was right now. You didn't have like a private queue.
And it was a global queue, so it was like you would just have to wait for other players, and people would just have to get in there, and it was a lineup.
And like, you know, a lot of people were like, well, saying things like you should have locks, you should be able to go on a claim armory or like this and that. And even with the idea of like your items in general, people were like, oh, you should be able to like have a storage box with a lock on it. You should be able to lock your stuff up.
Which we added at some point.
And that wasn't the right answer. In the end, it turned out that the stockpile system in conjunction with the factory system was the best, because once we added that, all sense of like ownership on the items was kind of gone. Everyone was like sharing. It's like you making items mean that you're making items not just for yourself, but for the whole team. And I guess the lesson we learned there, and the thing that I see here, is like sometimes the first solution in your mind is usually not the right one, right? The first idea of like, hey, maybe we should just lock trucks because people are stealing it, might actually make the game worse.
Yeah.
When you come at it from a different perspective, usually the best solution usually comes from those sorts of ideas. So I thought this was really cool.
Oh yeah, this is another.
This is an awesome idea.
This is a pretty cool idea. It's actually a very simple one, and I like it because it's simple, and I think it adds, is to have a separate chat channel for logistic coordinates. Actually, have a separate chat channel both for logistics and one for attack, for instance. Like have two separate chat channels. And I think that's really cool because it helps with the teamwork. The idea is that the chat is not for a squad in particular. It's the game chat.
Yeah.
So that all logistics, no matter if you are in a clan or without a clan, or in a squad or not a squad, all logistics can talk among themselves and better help the team. And the same thing with the attack. And you can separate between what's going on. You don't have people shouting orders and people like asking for BMATs and things like that in the middle of the chat while other messages are going on.
Yeah,
I think this is a pretty good idea. It would work perfectly with our the way that we are considering expanding the chat system and improving the chat system.
I mean, I remember having a conversation with you, Mark, that was really similar to this.
Yeah.
I
mean, the thing that and in that conversation, Matt, the thing that we sort of like the conclusion that we came to was that so we've seen a lot of different solutions to like solve the logistics problem, right? Like how do we get people to work together? How do we get people to like say, hey,
how do you deal with requisitions? And
how do you deal with requisitions and like orders and stuff like that? And we've seen a lot of ideas that are really cool. And in fact, we thought of those ideas too, of like some sort of screen with like a bunch of requests and a bunch of like fulfillments and things like that. But I think the conclusion that we came to, Matt, was that in Foxhole, something like that would be a little too much on the rigid side, right? It'll be too like restricting, and it will kind of work against the sandbox nature of the game to say, here's a list of stuff, you can request stuff, and then you can fulfill those requests and kind of like do it all in this sort of
abstract way,
rigid user interface. But rather, the right solution, which has always been the right solution for us, is to figure out a way to get people actually
communicating,
talking to each other, and like and not choosing from like a rigid list of things to do, but rather talking to one another and saying we should do this, right? So I think that when we go to improve the logistics requisition system, it would be more along the lines of something like this, where we improve the chat tools, improve the logging of what's happening, and then just let people figure out what they want to do instead of us going there and telling people how to run their logistics, right? We ultimately want people to figure it out for themselves, right? So
that's another thing too that you just mentioned, like the idea that things can be logged, like combat actions or combat orders can be logged, so you can see like a log of like recent things that have happened, or even just like state of war type things, logistics fulfillments. Like if someone can type something in chat or something that says like I filled this order, even if it was like not a UI thing, it's like someone asked for it.
Exactly.
And then like
even something as simple like an acknowledge, like you send a message and then you can click on the message and say I acknowledge that. If it's a personal message, the person sees a little button.
But I think the general idea is to make sure that, which is why I like this as well, is to make sure that people are communicating and working together, not working in a spreadsheet.
Exactly.
I think because like I think there are games that is cool for, like EVE Online is really cool in that regard. You can interact with people all over the game world, all over the universe, without ever even like knowing who they are. But I think the core of Foxhole is making sure that people are like organically working together.
Exactly.
So
yeah, I thought this was really cool. Do we have time for one more, or should we move on?
We should move on.
Okay, cool. All right, feature stuff. New features. Stuff that we're working on. So next is upcoming features and really I guess reveals, if there are reveals, or just new things. There's really not much else to explain there. So the features we're gonna talk about today is related to the landing APC stuff and like the water stuff in general. So as you guys remember, the last time we talked about this, there are a couple of things that we hadn't quite figured out yet, and there was kind of like work in progress, and then things were postponed with landing APC, which we hope to get to you guys soon. So we're going to talk about some of those things that were in the work in progress phase, starting with the Shipyard, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of a cool thing. So basically this is going to be a world structure where you can build vehicles that will go in the water. It'll only exist on certain maps. These are just an example of maps. These are not finalized.
Typically maps with a body of water.
Yeah.
Like a considerable body of water.
Like you won't see this on like Weathered Expanse, for instance. Like
maybe there's like an old one on a mountain, Matt.
Sure. Okay. Yep. You know what? Maybe it was all in the water at one point. We don't know.
And you'll be able to build sea-based vehicles, right? And the docks will allow for transport of heavy cargo to sea vehicles. So we're thinking about like how do you get things like a vehicle across, right? And I think it would be it would kind of work against some of the things we're trying to do with the amphibious warfare if you're allowed to do this at like any point in the map. So the dock on the shipyard is basically the only way you can transport these type of vehicles across, right? It's a bit hard to talk about this feature without talking about the next feature. So
why don't we move on to the next feature?
I'm just gonna like show you a couple of cool pieces of concept art of the shipyard, and then we'll kind of move on to the next feature, right?
But I think Julian did a really good job with this concept art.
He did. And like the takeaways on a map like Fahrenheit Costa's example, there may be 2 or 4. We're still kind of like figuring out the exact number of these, but it's going to be in very limited places, so you're not just going to be able to go anywhere and ship your cargo out, right? So that's that. Here's another more close-up version of it, and along with the references, and then finally the destroyed version, which we always have to have, right? So actually, just to go back to that last one for a second. So when you build a sea vehicle, the way it's going to work is kind of like how you build a bridge in a weird way, right? So you're going to walk up to the end of the dock, and then you can hit a button, and then you choose your vehicle, and then the build site for the vehicle will just appear in that little space in the L there, and then you can build it like how you build a vehicle at the vehicle factory, as an example, right?
Yep.
So that's that, and back to the destroyed version, and then finally, so on to the next thing, which is the barge, right? So a lot of you guys actually mentioned this before, and so it was kind of like no surprise in a weird way. When we were working on it, it's like everyone already like has been talking about this, so it's it's not going to be like a big deal or anything when we finally talk about it. But you'll be able to transport your vehicles across water, and the way it's going to work is you're only going to be able to, like I was saying before, transport a vehicle at a shipyard, right? So if you want to cross over to the other side, you're going to have to first go to the other side using a landing APC, and then you take the beachhead, and then you claim the shipyard there, and then you can bring your vehicles over. So you won't be able to just put a vehicle on this, travel the other side, and drop your vehicle off, right? So it's built at the shipyard, you must dock to the shipyard, and it's going to be slow, right? So it's not going to be something you want to do until your shipping lane is fairly secured, and you're pretty confident that you're not going to lose this traveling halfway through. Right?
Yeah, on a map like Fahrenheit Coast, like there's some pretty large distances between shore to shore. So something slow moving is going to be incredibly vulnerable unless you have the shore, basically. Because if they have artillery on the shore, you might be in for some trouble.
You're going to be vulnerable from what though? Right? Yeah, I think that's kind of mostly it for that. Here's some variations on the color. We're still in the process of figuring out which of these we want to go with, and I believe that's kind of the end of talking about this. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions on it, but that's all I have to say about it for now. That's it.
Sweet. All right. Well, we're going to get into a Q&A. And the first question, so start putting your questions in chat, and I'll try to catch them as best I can. But no promises. I can't answer every question. But the first thing I want to talk about is something that was a huge discussion going on during the entire stream that I want to bring up.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to kind of like distill it into a question. And will there ever be plans to make the combat more skill-based and less RNG-based?
Most likely not, right? And the reason is, from the beginning, we didn't want the game's focus to be about who has the best aim, right?
Yeah.
Who has the fastest trigger finger, right? We want the game to be about thinking about how to work as a team, right? Thinking about things like supply lines, and we felt like making it more on the skill-based side. And by skill, I mean like by skill-based, just to be specific, I'm talking about like the aim of your gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not like skill as in like
how good you are at logistics.
The skill should be, basically what I'm getting is like the skill should be in the strategy, not in like the individual.
That's
game.
right.
Yeah.
And from the very beginning, from the first day, why the game wasn't a first-person perspective game, which is something that we talked about at some point, is because we felt like the focus would be taken away from the strategy in a way. I mean, maybe there can be a version of the game that exists somewhere out there that is first person, but we felt like the first time that us or someone else tries to make this game, the focus shouldn't be on that, right? That's more of like an extra feature, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many things that we have to worry about already. There's so many challenges that we also had to worry about, like people doing like skill shots and stuff like that, and just I feel like it would take away from the game a bit, at least at this stage.
Because it should be because like sure, you're still gonna have like your Red Baron-esque figures in the game who are just maybe more like smarter about positioning, but it should be about like how your soldiers are positioned in a conflict, or how you're flanking.
That's right. Yeah.
Like laying down suppressing fire. Those types of things are sort of more important than like an individual being really good at shooting. That's how I feel.
So like
that's
the individual skill should never surpass the team strategy in any way. That's what we're trying to go with.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to another question. Lightning asks a good one. Will the APC be restricted or not available on certain maps that do not contain water, such as Upper Heartlands, or will they be there for infantry transport?
Right, so we don't have a final call on that yet, but we don't see a compelling reason why we should restrict people. Is kind of the leading thought, but it depends. We're going to put some more final thought into the corner cases to see what kind of impact it'll have on those maps, but currently we don't see a really compelling reason to restrict people, right?
No.
If you guys think of any good compelling reasons,
but if we find good uses for it on a map that doesn't have huge bodies of water, sure.
I mean, it'll be faster on water, I believe. I don't know if we've totally finalized that, but that was always my impression. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to move on to another question. This comes from the chat is moving too fast. The Gaming Sir asks, have you considered the bottleneck created if shipyards are protected by something like tanks? All you have to do is build in camp.
All you have to do is build in camp.
So like, if there's very few shipyards, then they're easy to protect and hard to breach. If someone can only come with infantry, I think.
Right.
I think is the...
So that's not technically different than a bridge, that in a way. Like, sure, there are bottlenecks, but they are built in the map. When Matt is creating the map, he takes that into consideration as well, like how easy it is for you to just stomate on that, and that is part of the map design.
To play devil's advocate, though, you can bring tanks on both sides. In the case of,
but so does the other guys, right? You know, with Shipyard.
But no, because if the other team has a shipyard, you can't just bring a tank over; it'll probably get destroyed. So
yeah,
like I think there's definitely some thoughts.
I think it was like the intention for it to be hard, right? For you even taking the beachhead should be hard, and to take the shipyard, it should also be like another hard thing. It shouldn't be something that is changed hands very often. And in fact, we just had a conversation about this this morning, Matt. Like, we're saying to take the beachhead should be a hard thing, right? Like, you got to work together for that. And if you're not ready to fully take the beach, to fully take the shipyard, you can lose it. You can lose it like really quickly.
That's not to say you also, like, just to put it in perspective, you're not just going to be able to land those vehicles like the APCs at the shipyard. The APCs can go anywhere that there's a shore.
Yeah.
So like the reason that you need to unload on the shipyard is if you're bringing tanks over on a barge.
Yeah.
Like, or other vehicles on a barge.
Yeah, that should be clarified actually.
So just to make that clear, the APC can land anywhere it can physically land.
Yeah.
So you could set up a whole camp on the other side of a beach, or take a town even with a group of soldiers, and then work your like. There's ways.
And just do a huge invasion.
You wouldn't be able to go and like take the town hall, right?
Because they don't have their construction,
right? But you'd be able to land your troops, and and
So
sort of
cut off some supply lines, ambush the
Yeah.
tanks. You just have to think about it. It's going to be different. I think Far North Coast is going to be really fascinating.
yeah.
So I'm going to move on to another question. We've asked a couple times now. Mechanics asks, is there any plans to reduce the effectiveness or frequency of AI in static defenses?
All right. That's like the age-old argument, age-old discussion. So that's been something that has been talked about so much.
Just FYI, that comes up like weekly here, like in the office as well.
And we had made some adjustments right before we launched into early access, and because I think the static defenses were a bit on the strong side, and we nerfed it a bunch.
Yeah.
I think we increased the amount of time they needed to start shooting you, and I think there's a couple of other things that.
Well, the tunnel network on its whole is a completely
The
different
tunnel
thing that
network
didn't
was
exist.
another huge thing. Before they were way overly cheap. You can just walk in the middle of nowhere, make a foxhole, and that was extremely cheap. So like we nerfed it a couple times. It's a balance, and it's funny because I've seen like both sides of this argument. I've seen people complaining about the static defenses, and then I've also seen people have a complaint that it's too hard to like hold ground, right? Because if you're not there, someone is just going to go over there and retake the ground that you already captured. And so like I think this is a hard problem. I think it's important that when you look at the problem, you look at both sides of that, because it sounds like an easy solution. Just don't have static defenses or make them weaker. But what's going to happen is you come into a war, you capture a few towns and you leave, and then half an hour later those towns are all gone, right? Towns are like flipping too fast, which is a problem that we had previously where it was way too easy, right?
Yeah.
Like, at least now, sure, like towns still do flip fast, but there's at least a bit more of a chance that if you take something, you can hold it, right? Whereas before it wasn't like that. So there's always a balance of those two things, and I think it's safe to say that we're not finished in like balancing the static defenses, and I think that we may consider trying to like nerf them a bit more in the future, but
I would say that we're
there's
not
always-
that far off, right? We're
I don't
not
think
too,
we're that
not
far
too
off, yeah.
like off the mark, because fact is if you have, this is a team game, and if you have a well coordinated group of 4 to 5 people, you can take the static defenses fairly
easily. Yeah.
If the static defenses are not being defended by humans. If they are defended by humans, it's a completely different matter, of course. But that's the advantage of the defensive position. But if it's just a static defensive without anything else, 4 or 5 people can easily take them down, as long as they are a little bit coordinated. So we're sure. I think we believe that there is room for improvement, but I don't think that we are that far off.
Yeah.
I think like from my perspective, like my complaint isn't so much like with the static defense isn't so much that they are too easy or too hard or whatever to defeat.
Either or.
I think they should be just balanced, and not necessarily to make them more effective or less effective, but to feel more in line with like player control.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like
That's a good point.
like for instance, right now they don't have to reload, so you don't have like a moment where you can. So it's like you have a bunch of foxholes shooting, and then they have to reload so that you can storm in during the reload and take
That's a
them.
good point.
I think those are the types of things that like I would personally like to see,
Yeah.
because I think it is necessary for the game to have some kind of like defense that happens when you're not around. But let's move on to the next question. I had it and I totally lost it. Evolving Dev asks, are we planning on balancing the maps based on campaign results? For example, it seems like the Colonials have a significant advantage on Deadlands. And my first thought to that is something we've always said, is that the maps are intended to not be perfectly balanced. Like in some maps, the Wardens will have an advantage. In some maps, the Colonials will have a slight advantage. We want to make them as balanced and fair as possible so that it's not like one team can't lose, but there's definitely no effort on our part to make it so they're perfectly balanced across the board. Every map is exactly balanced and symmetrical and all that stuff.
We're like we've said this like so many times. We do care about the balance, but we don't care about the balance like what they try to achieve in a game like StarCraft, right, where it's like, oh, it has to be 100% fair, because we think that the game would lose some of its I guess like some of the natural feel of the game would be lost if we were literally, our hands were tied and everything needed to be perfectly balanced, the same number of towns on both sides, the same travel distances, the same like resources. You know, like to us, that's not the goal of the game, right? The goal of the game is to not make a perfectly balanced game. Our goal of the game is to make players feel like they're part of a massive war. They're working with a whole bunch of people. They can go through a war.
And part of an engaging war sometimes is going against greater forces.
Right, exactly. And for players to be able to come out of the war and have a cool like story to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
this is not Dota.
Yeah, it's not Dota. It's not a MOBA. Like,
it's not a MOBA.
So, and it was never intended to be. Iron Giant Gaming says that makes sense. War isn't fair, and that was one of the first things when we started talking about map philosophy. I remember you were like, you're like in Normandy, like the Allied forces were way unmatched.
Yeah.
And they managed to get through. And that's, that may be the case in a lot of maps in Foxhole. And for instance, storyline wise, like the Colonials took Deadlands. So why would they not necessarily have a slight advantage in that regard? They took it at one point. I think the advantage is like minimal anyway. Like I think it's
overall
maybe a minor distance. Like I think overall the actual whole full like region is pretty balanced.
Yeah.
So because I make a perfect effort.
But to kind of like to be on the same page, it doesn't mean we don't care about balance.
Yeah, true, exactly. It's
just so it's absolutely clear. If we do see something that's not fair, like at one side,
we have changed things.
We have changed things many times to make things more fair, and it is in our mind. But we're not seeking like 100% accuracy. Is kind of what we're saying.
Yeah, it's like we will strive to make the game fair.
Yeah.
But there will be, like, I can guarantee you there would be like no symmetry. I think the most symmetrical map in the game is Fisherman's Row, and that was intended because it's a little bit more of a tutorial type map or a skirmish type map. So a question that we've got like 60 times that we've answered a million times, but there's more people. Will there be outfits?
Right.
Yes.
Let's bury that hatchet.
Yes.
Everybody in the community, tell everybody who asked that question.
I mean, like we're really excited about it. We've been like talking about it for so long. It's kind of like tanks in a way. Like it's just this thing that's been.
It's a huge thing, though.
This thing that we've been working on for so long and thinking about for so long. It's gonna happen, and we are actively working on it in the background, and I think that. I think in the coming months is when you're gonna hear us start to talk about it more, right? I think a part of it is like it's a resource like intensive feature, and we just gotta find the block of time to work on that large chunk of content, but it's happening.
There was this suggestion about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was a pretty sweet suggestion. It was, I don't remember who they were from. Sorry about that. It was just somebody suggesting that we had different colors of helmets.
Oh,
like the same helmet.
I was almost gonna put that on the suggestions.
It was a nice suggestion because it was just like you can have a helmet that is like a warden helmet, but it's either a blue, a green, a red, or a yellow, and there's no specification of what they're for or what they are. Like why they're that color. Is just that you can have those helmets as purely cosmetic, and the idea was that people can attach value in a way to those helmets in different ways. They can say, oh, all the green helmets are medic, so when you are dividing a platoon, or you have different clans that only use one kind of helmet, things like that.
And sort of let the community develop like memes
or whatever exactly
based on
it was a nice suggestion, and I think it kind of fits in our philosophy for outfits in which outfits don't give you a advantage or at least not a huge advantage on anything like it's more indicative of what you have and how you're using it, and in this case it's even more meta because it doesn't give anything. It's just whatever people assume when they see a red helmet is what it is. Maybe eventually the red helmet is what a red shirt is in StarCraft. It's the guy that is going to go there to die.
in Star Trek.
Star Trek, yeah.
Did you say StarCraft?
Did I say Star Trek? No, Star Trek, yeah.
There's no red guy in Star Trek.
All right, let's have another question. Hardison asked, what about commendations? I don't think the system is working. Mostly clans and groups of friends ranking each other up.
Yeah.
How do you feel about commendations?
I think that we have some issues that we have to look into, both commendations and reprimands. We always thought, originally thought for commendations and reprimands was to sort of like you see in Reddit that you see like good comments or interesting things get upvoted and things that are not interested to the community get downvoted. But I guess people attached way more value than we expected to that.
Well, I think it's that, and I think we just never had time to go back and revamp it, because like there are some things we know we want to try to do for sure. Like for example, if you commend someone, there should be some sort of a cap on that. Like you shouldn't be able to go and give like 5 commendations to your friend and have them, do the same to you. There should be like a limit, right? It should be a sort of like a basic form. It should be like you can only do like a round of commendations, and until a bunch of other people also give you a commendation, I can't give you like a second one, right? Like things like that.
Like as an upvote, you can only comment. Like let's say you can only comment one person once.
Right. Yeah.
And that's it. And
yeah. Because the way right now it's like you and your friend don't really need anyone else. You can just get to the highest rank.
Yeah.
Just with your friend, and just something really as basic as that should be implemented, but we just haven't had the time. I mean, that's just like been sitting there for so long, but
it's unfortunately it is a system that, in my perspective on the system, is that it's a system that is directly tied to how squads deal with each other and how we deal as a team, differentiating what one person is doing, right? I think that these are systems that are complementary to each other. It's just that it's something that with all the things that we had to do so far, we hadn't had the time to give the attention that this system requires. And I think it deserves attention. It deserves to be a good system and to be a system that people use in a gratifying way for both people receiving and giving commendations.
I also
can be something more than that. Sorry.
I also think that there should be more of an incentive for commendations or for ranking up. Like whatever that means, I have no idea. But ranking up right now is almost like once you hit a certain point and you can make squads, then there's really no reason other than like just like there's nothing that happens or there's nothing kind of special. And I think maybe there are things that can go along with that. Or there are ways that system can be expanded out to make commendations kind of a more valuable thing. As of right now, it seems like but basically from what I read, it seems like people are, it just happens.
Yeah, people get a lot upset with like reprimands, which is kind of what we expect. Like reprimands, people hate it because they're reprimands, but they kind of in a way work the way we want it.
I think
because like when people do something that they don't like, they get reprimanded, which is kind of what we expected.
Something that we changed in the last update is that you no longer see the name of the reprimander.
Yeah.
And we're interested in seeing how that works out, because now you won't know, so you can't. If your behavior is bad and you get like a reprimand, what will happen in the past is you would just go turn around and give a reprimand to the person who reprimanded you, and it kind of like defeats the whole purpose, right? Because people were like, well, I'm not going to reprimand anyone because I don't want to be, the target of one. But now, if your behavior is poor, you can receive reprimand. You don't know where it came from necessarily, right?
Yeah.
And that we'll see if that has any impact, right?
To follow kind of up on that question, because I know basically since I've been reading a lot of the community stuff lately, I actually lost the question, but I know what the question was. Do we have any plans to help discourage groups of players from abusing the vote kick system for their own means? Because I know that has been like a thorn in people's sides and
so
even our sides.
Yeah. So I don't want to talk about that too much right now, but we are working. That's at the top of our list, and that's kind of all I want to say about that.
Just say that we are committed to combat griefing in any way, shape, or form, including the griefing that comes from abusing the system.
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, there was a time when there was no tools, so we definitely have worked on this.
It is better than it is, but that one is like high priority for us.
Yeah, it's a very high priority, and I don't want to say too much of it.
Yeah, we don't want to also spoil something that people can counter it later.
Fantastic. I'm gonna ask one more question,
Cool.
And then I'm just gonna try to find a fun one.
Why make it a fun? Yeah, I was gonna say.
Is there any chance of adding aircraft like bombers or gliders?
Doesn't that question happen all the time?
I don't care if it happens all the time. I hope it continues happening until we add it.
It happens all the time, but let's change it. So right now, I mean, the answer is like we'd love to add it in the future at some point, but it's not like planned.
I would be ecstatic.
But let's change it a little bit and say like, if we were gonna add air, how would you like to implement it?
Okay, so
the question I'm turning it into is how would you like to?
I'll treat this as like a community suggestion.
Sure.
So this is not something we're planned or even like the leading thought. It's just random.
Just a pie in the sky. What would you think would be interesting?
I think that the first approach would be cool if they were paratroopers, right? Because there's still a tie-in with the current way that the game is played. So it's almost like a handoff to like other things, kind of like the landing APC. You know, it's not. We didn't start with like a cruiser or like or like a destroyer or just like ship combat. You know, we kind of started with how can we like integrate this.
How can we get things working on water?
In the game. I mean, like besides the technical reason, it's also like. How do we like integrate it in with the gameplay?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Right. I think having the landing APC is great as a first shot because it's in support of the game that's already there. We're not going off and making this whole other game, right? And in the same way with the air, I think the paratroopers would be a great way as the first shot of doing it, and then that could kind of like support the gameplay that we have right now, and then once that's there, you know. Sky's the limit, right?
So
Can I pie in the sky?
Someone has a cool idea that I just kind of want to read out. A recon scout on the ground builds a recon beacon, which they can set up in the field, which allows them to set a number of spawns for your team on that beacon, and then you can spawn as a paratrooper on that spawn area. I thought that was kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
That's interesting. For me, the way I would like aircrafts, because I'm more aggressive, and I don't care if I like this is pie in the sky, by the way. I would like that if aircrafts would be kind of like the ultimate weapons in a way of our like technology levels. When you get to the aircrafts, like literally the war has been going for weeks and weeks of real time, weeks and weeks of people trying to get the best tech, and it's like this airplane which one or maybe two, perhaps 3 people can use, but it takes a whole team to actually invest a lot of resources to make it build, and it's hard to control, but it is extremely powerful. It can have like it's an airplane, so you can fly very fast, but because you fly very fast, it's very hard to control. It's different than a car and a rifle or anything like that. But you can go over the map, get to the enemy very quickly, and either drop bombs or like a machine gun them down. But you have to be very careful. This is a very expensive machine, very hard to control. In their right hands, on very specialized hands, it could be deadly.
Right.
But if you do one wrong move, if you fly over maybe an anti-air cannon and you didn't notice, that's because your scout team didn't do a proper job or anything like that, you can just as easily lose that tech.
Sort of like the EVE Online.
Like EVE Online, like a huge
mentality.
battle.
Like if you put the larger ship in the hands of like a new player, and then a guy who knows what he's doing comes with a smaller ship, he can still do some like serious damage to it.
But I would love the aircraft in our game to be kind of like that ultimate thing that it can make it or break it for the team. It's such a gamble.
Right.
You never know if it's gonna be the ultimate devastation machine, or if you're just wasting all your money on that.
Yeah, that's cool.
That would be really cool for me.
I mean, the Air Force was expensive.
Exactly, like they are, right?
And really risky for pilots. So, anyway, that's gonna bring it into our stream. Thank you guys for hanging out. It's been fun. A lot of really great questions this week, actually, and
we're going to PAX.
Yeah, so
we talked about that last time. I believe we're at booth 6218. I'll double check that.
I posted when I post this video on YouTube. I made sure that there was the name. I'm gonna do it again. I'll make sure that when we on this part of the video, I'm gonna add it in whatever in here. This is the booth number.
Yeah, no, cool. We're gonna be there so stop by.
We would love to see you guys.
Yeah, stop by and chat
and next week, make sure to follow the Foxhole community stream. Follow their channel, watch their stream. They stream when we don't, on the week we don't. So they're always a good time. They talk about deeper mechanical stuff than we do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So show up at PAX, watch the community stream, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And hopefully we got some cool stuff coming your way in the next update.
Cool.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.